Hello everyone, welcome back to another long-awaited episode of my favorite series, Terrible Writing Advice, where I give you 3 pieces of common writing advice that are just not the best for writers to follow. And be sure to stick around for number 3 because that is one of my personal pet peeves. Let's get started. Hello everyone, my name is David Webb and I made this channel to give you the best tips on writing and creativity so you can finally finish your book or have that creative career you've always wanted. Today's first piece of terrible writing advice is always show and never tell. As you know, I recently made a video on showing versus telling, so if you want more information, be sure to go check that video out. But some people take the common advice of show, don't tell to an extreme, and they say always show and never tell. As you can imagine, this advice is not good. If you are always showing, you are going to slow down the pacing of your book. You're going to make it confusing at times for the readers who are always trying to dig through your words and try to find your hidden meaning. And frankly, it can be sometimes exhausting to read. Even people who say always show and don't tell know that there needs to be some level of balance between the two. But what I don't want you to do is blindly follow this advice and think that you always have to show. However, what I also don't want you to do is the exact opposite. And that's to listen to people who say that show don't tell is overrated and bad advice. People who tell you that show don't tell is bad advice A, don't understand what show don't tell really is, B, don't understand why it's important to show rather than tell and therefore don't understand things like evocation and immersion, or C, they're just bad at it themselves and think that it's overrated. I'll admit, it wasn't until recently that I realized that people don't often understand what showing versus telling actually is. Through some discussions that I've had recently about showing versus telling, I have found that some people apparently think that it means to not describe action, or to avoid summarizing transitions between scenes. And with that in mind, it's easy to see why people think that show don't tell is overrated if they don't understand what it even means. So do me a favor and go back and watch my other video on showing versus telling, and if you still have any questions, be sure to leave it down in the comments below. The next piece of advice that you should ignore is finish world building before you write your book. Now, if you're just looking at this advice at face value, it seems like a good thing. I mean, why wouldn't you want to finish preparing to write your book before you write your book? Unfortunately, world building is a trap, and a tempting one at that. Especially if you're a perfectionist, the brain has a funny way of taking your mind off the task at hand and focusing on anything but what you know you actually need to be doing, making it so much easier to get distracted by world building and dedicate so much time and effort into it that you never actually get around to writing your book. And what's worse is that after you've spent so much time world building, you have this very deep and rich and lush and detailed world that you have built that it's almost intimidating to write the actual book because you're afraid it won't live up to the expectations of this immersive world that you've created. However, you're coming at it from the wrong approach. The world building should not influence the story. The story should influence the world building. Otherwise, the book gets messy, wording, confusing, bloated, and if I'm being really honest, self-indulgent. Your readers may be fascinated by the world that you've created, but they came for the characters and the story. That's what readers connect most with at the end of the day. Now, I'm not saying don't do any world building before you write your book. Far from it. My go-to advice for world building before you even write your book is to world build only the history and the mythos that impact the immediate narrative of the story that you want to write. This does 2 things. It keeps you from spending time on all this world building that isn't even going to be in the actual story. And 2, more importantly, it keeps you from feeling like you have to put all of your world building that you've done into the final draft. Just remember, it's fine to do all this extra world building during and after once you've already decided on the main course of your story, but your focus should be what the reader came for, the characters and the story. Just one final precautionary tale on the note of too much world building. I know a guy who's been world building his book for the last 3 years, and as far as I know, he has not written a single word. Real quick, before we move on to the third piece of terrible writing advice, if you're getting any value out of this whatsoever, please do me a favor and hit the like button underneath the video, and then leave me a comment and let me know what you think, because I would love to hear your thoughts and it helps me out. So next up, write what you're comfortable writing. This is a huge pet peeve of mine. Huge. And it kind of goes along the same note as write what you know. If you always write what you're already comfortable writing, you'll find it very difficult, almost impossible to grow as a writer. If you write in the same genre you've always written in, if you shy away from certain storytelling techniques or tropes because you don't think that you would do a very good job of it, how are you supposed to get any better? It's just like exercising. In order to get better, you kind of have to make yourself uncomfortable. It's when you step outside of your comfort zone that you actually grow. I would dare say that no one has ever really done anything great and been completely comfortable about it. Now, you do have to balance this advice with audience expectation. I mean, if you're a romance writer and you've written romance for so long, if you write something else, you're going to confuse people. So if you are established professionally in a certain genre, I'm not saying it's the best idea to just go ahead and switch things up. I mean, if you really wanted to, you could start a new pen name. But this advice is specific to 99% of writers who do not have a career and do not have an established following. This is the perfect opportunity for you to grow as a writer because no one expects you to do any one thing. Take advantage of this time to be uncomfortable. Try new things. Force yourself out of your comfort zone. I remember a few years ago when I almost didn't write The Light Thief because I wasn't sure about writing from a female protagonist's point of view. To me, it was almost unthinkable, something that I never considered doing before and never thought I would do. But as I'm sure you can imagine, I'm so glad I did. So if you haven't done something for the first time in a long time, then it's about time. Step outside of your comfort zone, try something new, and grow as a writer. That's going to do it today for another 3 pieces of terrible writing advice. I've wanted to jump back into this series for the longest time, and frankly, I don't know why I haven't. But I would say far and away, it's one of the most fun things that I get to do on this channel. If you like this series and you want to see more, be sure to let me know down in the comments below. Send this video to your other writer friends who may or may not be listening to some terrible writing advice that's going on out there. And then be sure to subscribe and then ring the bell to stay notified of the next time that I do a terrible writing advice video. Thank you again for joining me. My name is David Webb, and get some writing done.